All right, guys, we're back for part two of the Bitcoin debate. I like the first one, and if you haven't watched the first part, what are you doing? You got to watch the first part to understand what's going on in the second part. I'm going to break it up into three separate parts. Like I said, it's a 46-minute video, so I'm going to break it up because I'm going to be talking too. So let's see what happens in part two.
Yeah, but I mean, just okay. Well, let's take. I heard two arguments there. One is Bitcoin is more secure than other forms of wealth. And that's in part because governments can confiscate it. And you gave the example of Cyprus. Now, that Cyprus example is really interesting. I mean, it really only dawned on me when you start talking about it now, because it sort of goes, the story that you sort of tell goes, well, you could have your assets taken just like they did in Cyprus, and that shows that your assets are not really secure in the bank or in some financial institution, without ever looking at like, well, why did Cyprus do that? And Cyprus did that because, of course, they wanted to avoid a financial crisis. So avoiding financial crises is like avoiding catastrophe. I mean, it's like avoiding a hurricane or avoiding the collapse of what just occurred in Sri Lanka, So the story that gets
should individuals have their hard-earned wealth confiscated to pay for the sins of their government or their central bank?
Good point, Anthony, but you shouldn't have cut him off. I didn't like that because he let you talk the whole time. He should have let him finish. So I kind of wanted to hear what he said, but let's continue.
Well, I think there's a very that's a kind of values question. Before you get to it, there's a more interesting, I think, practical question, which is, I come from a long line of pacifists, and some members of my extended family, and certainly the members of my family in the past, would say, wait, why should I have to go and die and fight and kill in a war that I did not create? Why am I responsible either for going to some other country to fight or having to defend my own country physically? I didn't sign up for that. And I actually have I still have a lot of respect for pacifists. It's a super courageous position because the result was often that you would end up still being sent to war, but not with a gun, or you'd be basically, imprisoned or persecuted or tortured or killed or whatever because of your position. So when I can respect the honor and courage in having an anti-government position that says, why should I have to defend my country physically, or why should I have to spend my money defending my country from a military attack or a hurricane or a financial crisis? But that's what nation states do. That's what it means to be a nation state, is that you conscript your young men to defend your territory, and you're going to confiscate your people's wealth to defend yourself against a financial crisis. That's what every nation state does. If it doesn't do that, it's not a nation state. So so the whole Cyprus example, and it's preying on a kind of ignorance of people, because it makes it sound like the Cyprus government was just whatever, as opposed to like, no, actually, there's a whole context there of why the Cyprus government did that. Now, in terms of the security of Bitcoin, I mean, I find the other thing as a newcomer to this space sort of shocked that whole rap that you just gave never mentions the fact that that dude lost $127 million of Bitcoin because he left it in his car.
I'm liking this. I don't know exactly who he's talking about, but I know of two people that lost hundreds of millions of Bitcoin worth of Bitcoin. I don't know if it was in his car or whatever. One guy was looking for it in his dump, in the local dump, because he left his big hard drive. This was before like all the cold storage stuff came out. He doesn't know where his hard drive is. And then another guy lost hundreds of millions of dollars in Bitcoin on his hard drive. And he had a cold storage, but he forgot his passcode. He just bought a bunch of Bitcoin when they're cheap, and he just forgot his passcode. And full transparency, guys, Bitcoin is not regulated right now. If you lose your passcode, you will lose your Bitcoin. That's the truth. Just like if you bury your silver somewhere and somebody finds it, you're going to lose your Bitcoin. You know what I mean? So, and that's what took me a long time to, when I first bought Bitcoin, when I was buying it on the exchanges, not to take it off the exchange and put it into my cold storage, because I was so afraid to lose my passcode. But now I did hours and hours of research on it and stuff like that. And once, and I'll do a video on that. Once I learned about that and everything else, I was really secure. There's many, many ways to keep your passcode secured. You can use a 12-word one or a 24-word one. And I know it sounds like a lot, but trust me, somebody that has it and stuff like that now knows better. So yeah, I'm glad he brought that up.
I mean,
yeah, but that's like saying
Bitcoin is as secure as gold.
No, but that's like saying, I always think of the security of an asset as the further away from the spigot, the less secure it becomes. So I'll use dollars as an example, then I'll use Bitcoin. The dollars
and answer the Cyprus example while you're at it.
Yeah, so the dollars that are created, Treasury, Federal Reserve, like the Treasury's never been infiltrated, hacked, robbed, anything like that. Now, when the dollars leave and they go in a physical truck and they're driven somewhere, there's plenty of armored trucks that have been robbed. When it sits in a bank, there's plenty of banks that have been robbed, right? And then if you have the dollars in your wallet or your pocket and you walk down the street and someone hits you over the head with a wrench, they take the money from you as well. So the further you get away from kind of the creation point of the currency, the less secure it becomes. So that's dollars. With Bitcoin, same thing. The Bitcoin blockchain, where the actual Bitcoin is held in terms of this public ledger, that is not ever been hacked before. Now, if you go and you put your Bitcoin on a physical hardware wallet and then you leave the hardware wallet on the counter at McDonald's, right? Or you leave it in your car and someone robs your car, then yes, of course. But that's the same thing as if you left the $5, sitting in your cup holder and you left your car unlocked, right?
Well, that's halfway true. And I don't know if he's talking about a cold. He said a hardware wallet, so I don't know if he's talking about a cold storage or a hot wallet, because you have a hot and a cold. Hot is when you're on the internet. Cold is when you're off the internet, like this one. This is a Ledger Nano X. That's what it's called. This is the newest one. They got one coming out next month for Ledger. I'm going to get that one too. That's nice. If I lose this, if I take this to McDonald's and somebody steals this, right, and they do not have my passcode, I got 24 words. If they don't know my 24 words, it doesn't matter. But if somebody finds my 24 words, they don't need this right here. They can go online, they can go on Nano X, they can go on Amazon and buy one of these, and all they got to do is put in the 24 words, and then, because it doesn't matter what this is just the on-ramp to it for the passcode. If they got your passcode, they can get in it. They don't need this right here. So when he's talking about the hard wallet, I'm not sure if he's talking about the hot wallet or the cold storage, but you need the passcode to do that. If I lose this today, it doesn't matter. I just buy another one. Like when I get my new one, I'm going to get the newest version of it. It's like 200 something bucks. I'm going to get that. I'm going to put my 24-word passcode in. And then you have a 4 to 8 digit number code that you put in every time you use it, like a ATM code or something like that. And then you put that in once, and then you're good. The only time you put it in again is if you plan on selling it or transferring Bitcoin or something like that. But yeah, this is not the actual storage that it holds from. So let's see what happens now.
So the further you get away.
On that. Let me pause on that one.
Okay.
Because if I lose my, because of course the big case for Bitcoin and other, digital assets is that they are more secure, for example, than having your money in a bank. Mm-hmm. But the only example that you have is Cyprus, and I'll let you get to that because I interrupted. But the other example is the credit card. Well, I mean, if I leave my credit card at the supermarket or at the airport, and of course I've done that many times, as most of us have, and somebody picks it up, this has actually never happened, but if somebody picks it up and they start spending on it, the credit card company will actually, at this point, I believe, they do not hold me accountable for it, especially if I call right away and I'm like, I lost my credit card. They're like, they put an end to it, whatever. That's a much more secure digital asset. So in that case, given that like a credit card versus a hard drive with Bitcoin or some other digital asset on it, clearly the credit card is more secure.
But it's
and
not.
And then you're left with Cyprus.
But it's not, because the credit card's not an asset, right? The credit card is you're spending someone else's money and they're just saying you don't have to pay us back. But it's not actually more secure. Whereas with Bitcoin,
the bank account.
Yeah. So with Bitcoin, if let's say I put it on a hardware wallet and I leave it in my car and you take the hardware wallet, you have the hardware wallet, but you don't have my Bitcoin. because you still need the private key, right? And if I just have the private key in my head, then I still own that Bitcoin. Unless you have the private key, you don't have the Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding. There it is. Man, he was scaring me. I thought he wasn't going to say that. I was like, man, Anthony, how can you not say that? And true. I have a friend of mine that we argue all the time about this. Oh, if I lose my passcode, I can do this. And if I lose my money, my bank can do that. But it's not yours. So I like that. I like that. You definitely need the 24-word code to get it in. That's cool. I'm glad he brought that up.
Right.
Anthony, that might be fine, but I think the point is that like my assets in my bank account are really freaking secure. They're more secure than Bitcoin, they're more secure than cash, they're more secure than gold. Like there's no real now both sets of my parents have been scammed recently. And it was like annoying, but like they didn't like lose like a significant sum of money. And when that happens, usually there's some sort of lawsuit or some sort of reconciliation. The bottom line is that our assets are more secure than they've ever been at a physical and technical and monetary level in human history. So Bitcoin neither Bitcoin nor any digital asset system offers greater security outside of some frankly outlandish political scenario like Cyprus, which I want to give you a chance to answer to.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Cyprus, I don't know if they're talking about the island of Cyprus or some kind of banking system, but I think that's what they're talking about, but I'm not sure about that. We have to Google that and look it up.
And which is even a case where it's like, just to turn it all back on, like if Bitcoin were actually really worth something, the Cyprus government would find a way to take that too, because that's what nation states do. They will just take your assets if they need them to defend the nation state. So I mean, let me pause and let you answer the Cyprus question.
So during the 2008-2009 global financial crisis, did any banks go bankrupt? Yes, right. If your bank went bankrupt and you had more than $250,000 in an account, there's no insurance, and people lost money. And so they put their money into an FDIC insured bank account. And even though it was FDIC insured, the bank failure ended up losing them money. So yes, on the
wait, I'm not even sure I'm understanding. Like, if you had your money in an FDIC insured account during the 2008-2009 financial crisis, you did not lose your money.
No, that's not true. If you had more than $250,000 in one account, you lost, and the bank went bankrupt. The FDIC insurance only applies to $250,000 in the account. So if you have $300,000, that $50,000 difference is not insured. You will lose that if your bank goes bankrupt.
And how much was lost? Okay, well, I'm being educated then. So in 2008-2009. How many consumers lost how much money from bank failures?
That's a great question. I don't know what that answer is, but it would be interesting to find out. And I think what we could probably find out is 2008, like a number of bankruptcies. We'll do a little Google sleuthing while we're going. So there was 25 bank failures in 2008, according to FDIC.gov. And I'm sure each one of them, frankly, has a whole bunch of different details. But when you look at the total assets of those banks in 2008, I'm looking at bank failures in brief. There was $373 billion that were in those banks that failed during of the bank failures in 2007, 2008. So again, that doesn't mean that everyone lost all the money. If all $373 $1 billion was in FDIC insured accounts with less than 250 grand, then would have all been protected. So I don't know what the number or difference is. But the point is that in 2008, there was 25 bank failures. In 2009, there was 140 bank failures. And in 2010, there was 157 bank failures in the United States.
I love it, man. Good points. Good points. I love this argument. But I'm going to tell you, this is why I don't keep a lot of cash in the bank, man. I only keep enough in the bank that I'm willing to lose. So me and my wife have an account. We have a certain amount of money in one account or cash in one account because we have credit card stuff going on and we get paid and basically, get annual things and stuff like that. But as far as like my bills and stuff like that, I only keep enough money to keep it in the bills. Because guys, let's pay my bills. Guys, listen, you have money in the savings account. As soon as you put it in the savings account, it's not your money. You know what I mean? They take that cash and they put it to work for them, and they pay you nothing for it. You know what I mean? And again, they give you the rigor of trying to get your money out and stuff like that. And I ain't for it. And another thing he didn't mention with the FDIC thing, the FDIC has up to 99 years to pay some of that money back, guys. So look that up. That's something I'm not making up. Look that up. So good points by Anthony talking about the banks, because it's definitely not yours if it's in there.
And so again,
but go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that there's probably a power law, right? JP Morgan has, way more assets in them than obviously some small bank. And you can imagine credit unions and kind of all these smaller organizations. But I think it goes back to this Cyprus example, which is, if you have more than $250,000 in an account and FDIC isn't covering the additional amount, to some degree, you made a mistake, right? It's your fault. Whether you think you made the mistake or not, there's a personal responsibility. You took your money, you put it into a bank, you thought it was safe, the bank ended up not being safe. It's not your fault that the bank failed, but you made the decision to put the money in and you chose an organization that ended up ultimately failing. The government provides that $250,000 FDIC insurance as kind of a safety net, and you put more money in there than kind of protected. And so again, personal responsibility, that's your fault. I think the example in Cyprus, which is you didn't choose an organization that failed. It's not the banks that failed, right? It was actually the government, and they needed the revenue. Yeah. And so they were confiscating it. Now, to your point, I understand very much the pacifist view. I don't know if you know this. I was actually in the U.S. Army. I deployed overseas. There's a whole bunch of stuff we could unpack in terms of people's perspective on war and all of these things and many of the misconceptions. And probably we see more eye to eye than you would think.
Military man, got to respect them. Thank you for your service, sir.
But in the United States, we have a voluntary military force. And I actually think that if there was some massive financial calamity and we went out to the citizens and we said, hey, there is $1 billion shortfall. Use a relatively small number for finance. And we need $1 billion donated in order to keep the U.S. financial system up. I think a lot of people would say, hey, you know what? I'll throw them $20, right? I'll throw in $100. Like, I don't want bad things to happen. But when it becomes less about the individual's choice, just as it's a volunteer military force or a voluntary kind of propping up of their own economy, and it becomes we are going to use a monopoly on violence and power in order to confiscate your wealth, and in the United States, what would be a violation of the U.S. Constitution, that's where I think people say, hold on a second here. Why would we ever put ourselves in a position to allow people to do that? And the one last thing I'll say on this, and then I'd love for you to respond, is I actually agree with you. This is like a 0.00001% chance of happening in the United States. Like, the United States, in my opinion, is the greatest country in the world. If you could pick anywhere in the world, you'd want to live in the United States. We have democratic political system. We've got a capitalistic society. We tend to have the most free society when it comes to a whole bunch of different things around speech and all this. So it's not me predicting it happening. I'm just saying that Bitcoin affords certain things when it comes to security and the anti-confiscation or the anti-censorship that other currencies don't allow. There's no other currency in the world that would allow you to hold it. And if for whatever reason someone wanted to confiscate it, allow you to not let them do that.
I have to agree with Anthony on that. As far as America having the strongest economy, he's right about that. You know what I mean? We're the cleanest shirt in the dirty hamper. We are the world reserve currency, and it is going to be very, very difficult to crash the U.S. economy as far as banks and stuff like that. But there is a small chance that it does happen. If it does, Bitcoin is an insurance for that little part. But the reason I have Bitcoin is because I feel like, and this is another reason why I don't think the economy will crash, is because of the CBDCs. Everybody keeps talking about, and even in Bitcoin and in the silver precious metal world, they keep talking about hyperinflation. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think we're going to lose the dollar and all this other stuff. I think they're going to transfer it over, because even though we're printing out of its world, to infinity, I believe that they're going to transfer us over to CBDCs. That's the thing. It's all about those CBDCs, not about the dollar crashing and stuff like that. I believe the world is going to go to a central bank digital currency. I think we're going to be under one world umbrella. They're all going to be connected, and it's going to be all about control and social credits and stuff like that. And I don't want to be any part of that. So I agree with Anthony 100% on that.
Yeah. Well, so just to finish the Cyprus issue, my point is much simpler, which is that if the United States or Cyprus were being invaded, it wouldn't be a voluntary military force to repel the invaders. Similarly, when you're under a financial crisis, which is what they were under, or if we were, of course, the government would seize people's assets. Like that's what happens. And you can like kind of go, well, that's not fair or whatever. But like you live in a nation state. The government is not like another corporation. Like the government is responsible for like protecting us from external harm. That's Hobbes. And like there's a sort of sense I get from when I hear people talk about this that kind of goes, well, what right does the Cyprus government have to take my money in a financial crisis? It's like you are a citizen of the nation state of Cyprus, and when they're having a financial crisis, they're going to use the assets that they have available to protect their nation state. They're not going to become a ward of whatever. They're not going to be invaded by another country, and they're not going to let their currency collapse. So,
but Cyprus was hired. Cyprus was hired by the citizens, right? In the United States, I, as a citizen, I am paying for the government. I'm paying for the local government. I'm paying for the state government. I'm paying for the national government.
Hiring is not the correct word.
Well, of course it is, because I hired the state of New York.
No,
right?
Because hiring is optional. Hiring is something that an employer hiring, like you're paying your taxes.
Well,
that's not the same thing as hiring somebody.
But here's a good way, and I think maybe this is a difference of perspective. I hired the state of New York when I lived there, and they provided me services. And when I chose that I didn't think I was getting my money's worth, I voluntarily hired a different state government and I moved to Florida. Right?
You're just using like inappropriate language from the private sector to describe your obligations to the nation state. But it's inappropriate because they're not the same.
But see, this is a difference. My obligations to the nation state is the government is here to represent the people. The people are not here to serve the government. There are hundreds of thousands of people who fired California and New York in the last 24 months, and they hired Texas and Florida to the point where they literally lost political seats because people said, I am paying money and the services that I am getting do not fulfill what my needs or desires are. And so I think this is like one of the big things here is it's personal choice. Like you can vote with your dollars and you can vote with your feet. And what we saw over the last 24 months is usually just domestically. I don't think actually there was one talk track of people were going to like repeal their citizenship. They were going to move to some crazy country somewhere around the world. I actually don't buy that. I don't think people are going to do that. I think the U.S. passport and U.S. citizenship is kind of the light on the shining hill. Right? Everyone wants to become a U.S. citizen for the most part. Yes, there are some people who say no, but there's a lot of people who want to become U.S. citizens. But I 100% think that if a government is not fulfilling the needs and wants and desires of citizens, they will move, they will take their dollars elsewhere, and they will fire, right? Again, when we go to the ballot box, if you're an incumbent and you don't get reelected, you got fired by the people.
He's right about that. I agree. I like this conversation, man. It's really going good. I gotta figure out what the Cyprus thing is talking about. I'm not exactly sure. I'm gonna be completely honest. If you guys know, leave it in the comment section. We'll look it up together. Sounds like they're talking about, I don't know. I'm not gonna speculate, but I maybe sound like a dummy. It's kind of late when I'm making this video, but yeah, leave it in the comment section. Let me know how you think this is going, man. I like the back and forth. I like the cynicism of Michael about Bitcoin. And I like how Anthony's talking about it, because in the mainstream media, they, and just the mainstream in general, everybody keeps their money in a bank. You know what I mean? We were taught that in school and stuff like that. And Bitcoin's something new. It's something different, and people are going to be reluctant to it. It's just like when the internet first came out, it seems silly to some of you young guys to think that how can nobody, want to do the internet? Trust me, when the internet first came out, people didn't want to hear nothing about it. Same thing with Amazon. They thought Amazon was stupid because they only sold books and it was clunky and nobody could, do it. But again, with Bitcoin, in comparison to the internet and Amazon, the reason why I'm saying it, because I truly believe that Bitcoin, as far as the internet to information, Bitcoin is that to money. I really believe that. And Bitcoin has a faster adoption rate than both of those, than the internet and Amazon in the first 14 years. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Stay tuned for part 3.